Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary from the release of a career-defining album, landmark album for the band Kiss. You see it here behind me. I have another copy right here as well, simply titled Alive. I'll give you a little bit of history, background about the making of the album. And as you see here, I have 4 different copies on vinyl. I will also give you a shootout on some of these copies, give you my thoughts about how they sound, and probably recommend 1 or 2 of them for you. All of this right after our intro. Before we get into talking about the album, Kiss Alive, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what was going on with the band Kiss leading up to the release of this live album. On my channel last year, I think it was February of 2024, I celebrated the release of their debut album, which came out in February 1974. That album did not yield the commercial success that the band had hoped for. They quickly re-entered the studio and to record a new album, this time in LA. And in October of 1974, the band released Hotter Than Hell. That album also recorded under particular circumstances, probably a bit rushed, and the result of the album is a poor sounding album. Actually, I have to say probably the worst recorded albums ever. It sounds like it was recorded underwater. Some great songs on Hotter Than Hell, songs that have stayed in the band's live concerts for many years. And it's a shame that probably it wasn't recorded well. Needless to say, Hotter Than Hell also did not achieve the commercial success that the band had hoped for. They reconvened back in New York City in during the beginning of the year, 1975, setting up shop again back at Electric Lady Studios in the Village. And they recorded another album called Dress to Kill. That album, probably one of my favorite Kiss covers. There's quite a few that I like, but that one is very unusual because they're wearing plain clothing and in makeup. And that album had some probably the best recorded songs, like the best sound recorded songs of any of the first 3 Kiss albums. It included the very first studio version of Rock and Roll All Night, but that also did not chart. The band was very frustrated. They felt that they weren't being supported by the label. They had been given in advance. Since then, they had not received any royalty checks, obviously, because probably the records weren't selling. And they were in the process of suing Casablanca Records for breach of contract. And while all this was happening, Casablanca also was heading into financial difficulties. And the manager, the Kiss's manager, Bill Aucoin, came up with a brilliant idea. He could not figure out, and the band couldn't figure out, the label couldn't figure out why the live success of Kiss, because they were selling out arenas, could not translate to radio airplay, nor could it translate to commercial sales of records. So Bill Aucoin thought that maybe it was the best approach was to record the band live during one of their shows or multiple shows, as they had just released 3 albums within the span of 18 months or 16 months, and bringing tracks from all 3 of these albums, the best tracks from all 3 of the albums, and trying to record it. He financed the tour, which was called the Dress to Kill Tour, and they headed out in the territory, in the markets where they were the strongest, which is the Rust Belt. And this album, Alive, was recorded over the course of 4 shows or at least 4 locations. The first one being probably the most famous one, and I think the one where most of the recordings were taken from, is in Detroit, Michigan, Cobo Hall Arena. And you see it here. I believe this picture was the picture of the amphitheater. And as you can see, it is packed. It's sold out. So they had a huge following. And the other performances were taken from Davenport, the RKO Theater, the Cleveland Music Hall in Cleveland, and also from New Jersey in Wildwood at the Convention Hall. The band recorded these shows, maybe not perfect, so they decided to tinker with them a little bit. They went back to Electric Lady, and along with Eddie Kramer, who I believe also recorded the original, yes, produced and engineered by Eddie Kramer, the original live tapings, decided to apply some overdubs. And for many years, they denied it. Kiss, the band, management, denied that the album was not fully recorded live. But subsequently, they did admit, both Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley, Eddie Kramer himself, admitted that there were some significant overdubs. Vocals had dropped off, either because the band was not singing directly into the microphone. Some new vocals were touched up. Some guitar solos were recreated in studio. But interestingly enough, as much flack as Peter Criss gets, no changes were made to the drum tracks. They were left intact. So kudos to Peter Criss for holding it all together for the band during all these live shows. In addition to tinkering a little bit with the sound of the instruments and the vocals, they also enhanced the audience. Eddie Kramer admitted to adding probably a little bit too much applause and audience participation in the background to make it sound even more like a live recording. In the end, Eddie Kramer did say, what's the big deal? Yes, we did play around with some overdubs, but it still gives you the feeling of being at a Kiss live show. And that is what the band was aiming for. On this album, I have to say, all of the songs included are definitely, all the performances are superior to their equivalents on the studio albums, in my opinion. Yeah, maybe there are some studio versions from the first album that I still enjoy a lot. But I have to say, and anyone will attest to the fact that Rock and Roll All Night doesn't sound very great on Dress to Kill. It's killer on the live album. And that is the version that most likely you will hear played today on TV, on radio. It's the version from Kiss Alive. Kiss Alive finally charted. It peaked at number 9 on the Billboard chart. It stayed on the chart, and I think this is the Kiss album that stayed the longest on the chart for 110 weeks. Huge commercial success. It was certified only for 500,000 copies in the US, which is very strange. Which means that it went gold, but it's estimated to have sold 9 million copies worldwide. Obviously, critical reception was not the best. Kiss were never critics' darlings. Very lukewarm, bad reviews. In hindsight, many, many years later, though, it has been reappreciated. It is considered probably one of the most important live albums. It's been included quite a few times in various iterations of the Rolling Stone Top 500 and ranked amongst some of the best live albums by other publications. So in the end, this is an important album for Kiss. And even for those who don't enjoy or not hardcore Kiss fans, I'm sure many of you have Kiss Alive in your collection. And now we're at the second part of the video where I promised you that I'd talk a little bit about the various copies that I have owned over the years of this album. And I'll give you my thoughts, and I'll probably recommend a few. First up is the very first copy that I purchased right here. You could see it's well loved with the ring wear. And I bought this album not when it originally came out in 1975. I bought it a few years later because the first Kiss album I bought was Destroyer in 1976. So I started slowly buying all the other albums, and I think I may have bought this in 1977. And it's very special to me because when you're a kid, your parents mostly buy your records, right? And this was an expensive record for the time. So I saved up my money, my allowance money. Maybe I mowed a few lawns, and I finally ponied up the sum of $10 to buy this album. This was the very first record that I bought with my own money. $10 in 1977 is the equivalent of $53 today. So you can imagine the sum, how much it meant to me to shell $10 for a record. I really loved it. And I had to love it because it was Kiss. So I love this album cover. It really captures Kiss live. It's a fantastic shot. The back, I've already showed you the back. The fans holding up drawings, they're posters of Kiss. Inside, it has notes, handwritten notes by the band, which I read over and over and over, as well as a recap on the first three albums. Great gatefold. And it also came with something that it was very different for me. All the albums that I had never had any type of additional booklets or anything. And this is the 12-inch book that it's an 8-page booklet that came, and with pictures and the autographs of the members here reproduced. Then you have the middle with, you know, all the fire and all the fantastic images of the band live. Paul Stanley here, as well as Ace Frehley. And of course, another live shot. All of this was just everything for me. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this copy that I have. I didn't know much about pressings. I was 8, 9 years old. And I played it on whatever equipment my parents had. Not the best equipment. And I felt like I was at a Kiss show. I also wanted to show you, because it's not a very first pressing, it's probably I'll have to probably detail it in the description of the video, which version it is. It may have been pressed in 76 or 77. It comes on the Casablanca Desert labels. As you can see, I also have my initials. I was a kid. I didn't want anyone to steal my records. So again, it sounded like I was at the show. I was a little kid. I probably only dreamed about going to a Kiss show. I knew my parents wouldn't take me. They weren't into Kiss at all. So this for me was everything. So fast forward quite a few years. For many years, my Kiss record collection was in a different location. I was listening to a lot of CDs. I bought Kiss Alive on CD, listened to it, enjoyed it on CD for many, many years. And until I started buying vinyl again, I had, of course, to buy another version of Kiss Alive, one that I could play on vinyl. And the version that was available at the time was in the series Back to Black. You could see it here on 180 gram by Universal. And it's this one right here. I believe it's from 2008. And you could see already from the cover, totally different from what it should look like. The colors are very, very saturated. If you compare it to this, almost artificially saturated, but essentially same packaging. Also has the booklet inside, which I won't show you again. But they went to great lengths to reproduce the original labels. Which were the blue Casablanca labels, which you can see here. And when I played this copy, I had much better stereo equipment. And I played it and I was so let down. I felt, wow, this is what I enjoyed when I was 9, 10, and afterwards years old. It didn't sound like a live show anymore. I attributed the difference to, okay, maybe I have a better system. Maybe that is highlighting how maybe the time of the recording, how it was recorded, poor quality of pressing, I don't know. So I was quite disappointed by this copy. And I figured, okay, I guess that's how the album should sound. It was remastered recently. I didn't know anything about mastering engineers, so I stopped at that. So fast forward to 2014, KISS celebrated the 40th anniversary, and they remastered the entire catalog. They came out in different tranches, and they also released, and I purchased the majority of them. I think probably all of the 2014 reissues. And of course, I had to buy another copy of Alive. As you can see here, again, it says remastered, first time on vinyl since 1985, and on 180 gram vinyl. I put this on, and I was brought back to when I was a kid, and I realized, yes, this is how it's supposed to sound. Not like that other copy that I just showed you. I remembered, yeah, this is how I remembered this album. This is how it's supposed to sound. And I was finally happy with having a copy that reminded me of how it was supposed to sound. It was alive. It was punchy. It made me feel, again, like I was at a live show. But of course, I didn't stop there. Why would I, right? Browsing around record stores, in the record bins, I always come across KISS records, and they're not always in the best condition. So I always cherish my originals because I always took very good care of my records. Yes, at the time I didn't have sleeves, poly sleeves. They have some ring wear, they have some general wear, but they are my records from when I was a kid. So I cherished them. I really care about those records. But there are a few that I repurchased again, even though I have good originals. One of them being Alive. The reason why I repurchased Alive is because I finally found a very good copy in very good condition, a very first pressing of Alive. And again, we have the Casablanca blue labels. As I mentioned earlier, my first copy that I owned had the desert labels. And I was also curious to know how this other copy, which also of course has some ring wear, all the booklet is intact and everything. More importantly, it also came with something very peculiar, which is the original inner sleeves of the time, which are Casablanca kind of advertising sleeves. So I was really excited to see these for the very first time. Here advertising some of, see the KISS records and the other Casablanca releases. So that was really a nice treat for me. So I put this album on, and at this point I started comparing various copies, and this copy, and I'll reveal more detail about this copy, was the one that blew me away, even more so than the very first copy that I owned. Lo and behold, the copy that I had found on the blue labels is mastered by none other than Robert Ludwig. And the copy that I had enjoyed for 40 plus years, the one on the desert labels, was mastered by Alan Zenz. Is there a huge difference between the first pressing on the blue label by Robert Ludwig and the excellent Alan Zenz mastered of, I guess, the subsequent pressings? There is. If I have to say, the main difference is the loudness, but not so much the loudness of how it was cut. It just sounds more alive. I've mentioned many times during this video, listening to this album always gave me the impression of being at a Kiss concert. The Robert Ludwig cut, mastering, brings you right there in the middle of the crowd. It is alive, just like the title of the album, and I think probably how it should sound. Mind you, the copies mastered by Alan Zenz are excellent. I've loved them. There is a difference between the Robert Ludwig and the Alan Zenz. You will notice it. I noticed it. It's quite evident. It's just raw, alive. You're right there. And now the other two that I spoke about. Let's draw the conclusions here. This, with the saturated cover, the back to black, mastered by Kevin Gray, is probably the worst of the bunch. Sounds like a wet blanket is in front of your speakers. I don't know what source Kevin Gray was given. It's just really, really bad. I keep it, I hold on to it just so that I can play it for friends, people that are into music, into listening to different pressings, just to show them the difference between an original Robert Ludwig or Alan Zenz edition and this back to black cut by Kevin Gray. I can't say any worse things about it other than it sounds like a wet blanket is over your speakers, or as if when you have a cold, you know, and you have all your sinuses in your ears, they seem all clogged. That's what this copy sounds like. So avoid at all cost. And then we come to the 2014 remasters, the copies that are currently on the market, currently in print. They're solid. They are, I believe, cut by Kevin Reeves. I'm not sure. I think I see RM in the dead wax as well. So maybe Ron McMaster may have had a hand in these. They were cut in 2014. And they are probably from a digital source, but they sound amazing. At least this one, alive, sounds really, really good. I would say if you can't find a clean original Robert Ludwig or an Alan Zenz, this is definitely there. I would say this, along with the Alan Zenz, probably is number 2 on my ranking. Obviously, number 1 is the Robert Ludwig cut, which I highly recommend. It's this one here with the ringwear, blue labels. Look for the RL in the dead wax. You will not be disappointed. So that wraps up our celebration, our 50th anniversary celebration for the album Kiss Alive on Fidelio's Frequency. Maybe there'll be future videos about Kiss on my channel. You know I'm a fan, but that wraps it up for today. I always appreciate your comments. Please let me know which copy you own of Kiss Alive. Let me know which ones you like. I will put in the description of the video the links to the Discogs pages of these 4 different pressings, so you can compare for yourself. You have a point of reference. And most importantly, click like if you liked this video, or if you didn't, thumbs down. Feel free to do that. Feel free to leave a comment. Share your thoughts, your memories about this fantastic album, Kiss Alive. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just click that subscription button. It costs you nothing. It is free. I am not charging you for this. It's just a way to build up the channel and get more visibility. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.